Here's number 2. Marie can eat the entire cake in 10 minutes. Antoinette joins her after 3 minutes, and together they eat the rest of the cake in 4 minutes. How long will it have taken Antoinette to eat the entire cake alone? So this is the rate of Marie times the time of Marie is going to tell you how much she can eat. So there's our rate problem. The very first sentence, Marie can eat the entire cake in 10 minutes. What's that tell you?
Her rate is 1 over 10.
Her rate is 1 over 10. Antoinette joins her after 3 minutes, and together they eat the rest of the cake in 4 minutes. So they eat the cake in 4 minutes. What time are we looking for? Or what are the times that we're going to use? For who? Seven minutes is one time, but no. Antoinette joins her after 3 minutes. So that means that Mary eats for 3, and then together they can finish it in 4 minutes. So the time of, is it Marie? The time of Marie is 7. The time of Antoinette is 4. So we want to know her rate. Subtract 7/10 and divide by 4. How long will it have taken Antoinette to eat the entire cake alone? Is that what we solved for? If you look at the rate, that's rate. What are units for rate? Yes. Your rate is in cakes per minute. So if you look at your answer, it's 3 cakes per minute. What do they ask you for? How long will it take her to eat 1 cake alone? You can either think of it as, now they want to know how many minutes per cake, or you can look at it as a unit multiplier. I have 1 cake. I know that I can eat 3 cakes in 40 minutes because that's my rate right there. 3 cakes in 40 minutes. So then if I want to look at it, the cakes actually cancel, and how long does it take you to eat 1 cake? That's where they're getting the answer of 43rd minutes. Or if you want to go ahead and divide that, you could say it's going to be, what, 13 1/3. 13 1/3 minutes to eat 1 cake. But they just leave the answer as 43rd minutes. So I bet a lot of you had 3 over 40. But the reason that's incorrect is because they're asking for the time. Anybody else have that? Number 3 as well. Matilda was dismayed when she found out that it would take 2 workers 3 days to do 6 jobs. What type of an equation am I looking for? Yes. Work equals number times rate times time. So if I read the problem again, 2 workers, 3 days, 6 jobs. Number is 2 workers. Time is 3 days. Work is 6 jobs. What is rate? It would take 2 workers, 3 days to do 6 jobs. So R is 1. Now you come back over to problem again, or formula, and it says she hired 4 more workers. So how many workers do you have now? 6, because here's your workers before. She had 2 workers. She hires 4 more. Now you have 6 workers. Now how many days will it take all the workers to complete the 6 jobs? So now I still have 6 jobs. The rate is 1 because we found that before. So how long is it going to take them? 1 day. So 19C says, I think, G of F. G of F of 10. And this is what we know. Well, what does that mean, right? That G of F of 10, that's something you were used to seeing in pre-calc that looks like this. G of F of 10. That means the same thing. So I really do think you know how to solve it. I just think you're not used to that notation. So F of X is equal to 3 minus log X is 10. And G of X is X squared plus 2. So the first thing you want to find is F of 10. 3 minus log 10 base 10. So if we remember, this part right here is saying 10 to what power equals 10. So that has a value of 1. So you're at 3 minus 1, which is, oops, I don't want to circle that. 3 minus 1, which is 2. And I put that in over here because now I'm asking you for G of 2, which is 2 squared plus 2, which is 6. Just a different notation of asking you something you already know how to do. Completing the square. First thing we want to do is I'm going to kind of do a couple things here all at once. I'm going to group the x's together. So we're going to have 4x squared minus 2x. And I'm going to move the constant over to the other side. So that's equal, well, plus 2 equals 0. What's the next step we do? Yep, we're going to factor out the coefficient of x squared, which means I'm going to factor out a 4 or divide everything by 4, which leaves you with x squared minus 1/2 x. Oh, mistake in the very first part right there.
Well, none of my numbers like this.
Now what do we do?
Now take that out and multiply by 1/2.
We're going to divide that by 2, which means multiply it by 1/2, which is going to give you -1/4. And then what do you do to that? Square it, which is positive 1/16. But how much did you add? You added 4/16, which is the same thing as 1/4. So you are going to have to subtract 1/4. And what is 2 minus 1/4? 7/4. Was there an I in your answer? That's where you messed up. If there is. I just couldn't remember when I looked at yours. All right, now the process of solving, how do you solve from there? Or is everybody okay up to that step? All right, so the first step is to move your 7/4 over. And then what? Divide by 4. Oops, it's not what I wanted. So if I divide the left-hand side by 4, I'm left with the quantity x minus 1/4 squared. And if I divide the right-hand side by 4, that's like multiplying by 1/4. So you are going to get -7/16. So the next step would be to take the square root. Square root of the left-hand side is x minus 1/4. Square root of the right-hand side, you get plus or minus. When you take the square root of a fraction, you take the square root of the numerator over the square root of the denominator. So just rewriting it, I'm going to get x minus 1/4 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 7i over 4. And then as your final step, move the 1/4 over. So x is equal to 1/4 plus or minus the square root of 7 over 4i. Here's how I know which way you did that as well, because if you do the quadratic formula, you're going to have it all as one fraction because it's all over 2a. So most people that do the quadratic formula, I see it like this. Because when you simplify it, that's what you're going to get. Answers the same. Some of you have been missing this because you're not providing all the values. That's one spot. X squared plus y squared equals 16, and y minus 3x is equal to 4. Now I cannot just square both sides to get elimination, where I have y squared minus 9x squared. Because you have two terms there, and if you square, you can't square individual terms, you square both sides. But if I square the left-hand side of the second equation, that's actually going to become a FOIL process. And when you do that, you're going to have a middle term. That's going to leave you with y squared minus 6xy plus 9x squared. That doesn't get you anywhere in elimination substitution. So we don't want to square both sides. So instead, what we're going to have to look at is substitution. So I'm going to take the bottom equation and solve for y probably, so I don't have fractions. So you get y is equal to 3x plus 4. So I'm going to take the top equation now, because what I want to do is I want to substitute. So I'm going to substitute that in place of y. So we're going to have x squared plus y, which is 3x plus 4 squared, equals 16. So that gives you x squared plus, now if I take 3x plus 4 and square it, do you know what you're going to get? Without me writing all 4 terms down in FOIL. 9x squared, multiply the 2 together, and double it. So you get plus 24x plus 16 equals 16. Is everybody okay with that? Now, if I group like terms together, I'm going to have 10x squared plus 24x. If I move the 16 over, I get 0 equals 0. How do I solve that? Well, what can you factor out of both terms? Since it's a quadratic, but there's an x in both terms, and there's a factor of 2 in both terms. So you factor out 2x, which leaves you with 5x plus 12. Do you agree with that? Now I'm multiplying 2 factors together. One of them is 2x, and the other one is 5x plus 12. When you multiply 2 factors together to get 0, one of them has to be 0. If the first factor is 0, what is x? Well, divide by 2 and you get 0. If the other factor is 0, I'm going to subtract 12 and divide by 5. And you get negative 12/5. So there's 2 possible values for x. So the first possible value is 0, and the second possible value is negative 12/5. Now that is your x. I don't care which route you go from there. If you take this y equation right here, y is going to be equal to 3 times your x value plus 4. So if x is 0, you're going to get 3 times 0 plus 4. And what's the y value? 4. You could put it into the top equation where x squared plus y squared equals 16 if you wanted to. If you did that, I'm going to move over here to this side. X squared plus y squared equals 16. If you solve that, if you let x be 0, you get y squared equals 16. And when you take the square root, y is equal to plus or minus 4. But you need to check yourself and say, if y is negative 4, does that give you a correct solution? Y is negative 4 minus 3 times 0. Does that equal 4? No. So that is incorrect. So that's where it gets you back to just 4. And if you use the other equation, y equals 3x plus 4, then you don't have to worry about double checking that. So when you take that square root there, you got to be careful with that. All right, the other thing you need to check is what if it's negative 12/5? So it's 3 times x, which is negative 12/5 plus 4. Well, that's going to be negative 36/5, and 20 with a denominator, or 4 with a denominator of 2. Let's back up. 4 with a denominator of 5 is 20/5. So if you group those together, you're going to end up with negative 16/5. So here's your intersection points. And if you think about what your graph involves, x squared plus y squared equals 16. That's actually a circle. It's a circle that's centered at the origin and has a radius of 4. But you have a circle and then you have y equals 3x plus 4. It crosses at 4 and it has a slope of 3. You're going to have 2 intersection points. And if you do have a radius of 4, it makes sense that one of those points is 0, 4, because that is your y-intercept. But it's also the radius of a circle centered at the origin. It's going to go up 4. That's going to be a point. So one is actually on the circumference of the circle. Well, they're both on the circumference of the circle because they're intersection points. But one is actually designating that radius of 4.
What's the answer?
16. 3 the cosine of 30. 3 halves. The cosine of 30. 3 the cosine of 300. I don't know why I said 30. 300 is in which quadrant?
The
Fourth quadrant, and the reference angle is 60 degrees. All students take calculus. It's going to be a positive value, and what is the cosine of 60 degrees? 1/2, and that's where you get your 3 halves from when you multiply it. Done. A sphere has a volume of 4,500 pi cubic centimeters. So the volume of the sphere. 3. If the volume of the sphere is decreased by 3,528 pi cubic centimeters, by what amount is the radius of the sphere decreased?
The second one, I got like a big number.
4/3 pi r cubed. So if I divide by pi, that gets rid of that, right? So then I'm going to have r cubed is equal to 4,500 times 3/4. Do you agree with that? I'm going to start reducing here. 4 goes in there, and I know an even amount of times. So 1, 10. If I take that times 3, is that what you get? Now, if I take the cube root of that, I'm going to take your word for it. 15. Okay. Now, what it says is it decreases it by 3,528. It decreases it by that amount. So I'm guessing most of you didn't subtract that. You use that as your new volume, but it's decreased by that amount. Is it 972 pi? So now the volume of your second sphere is 972 pi. So 4/3 pi r cubed is equal to 972 pi. Divide both sides by pi. So r cubed equals 972. If I divide by 4/3, I multiply by 3/4. Four goes in here. 2, 17, 4, 16, 12. Take that, and you get 9, 12, 729. So r is equal to 9. Then times 9 is 81 times 9. So how much is the radius decreased by? Yep.
Thank you.
Is that everything?